Hello, hello, I'm MrShine, back once more for the conclusion of my Warlock Arena run. If you haven't seen it yet, I drafted a masochistic Warlock deck here. I suggest you watch that video before going any further. In fact, watch the quiz video and you get free cake! Are they gone? Okay, good, let's keep going before they realize the cake is a lie. In this video I'm going to go through some of the highlights and lowlights of the run, taking a look at how certain cards and strategies played out. I'll then walk through some key points in the run and give you a chance to experience it in my shoes. Finally, I'll take a game nearly in its entirety and talk through the plays I made, and maybe we can all think about what I could have done differently that may have turned the game around. First things first though, you probably want to know how this deck performed. I had very high hopes for this deck, but sadly it stopped at 7 wins. I do think it had the potential to do even more due to its card quality and exceptional curve, but, well, I guess you'll just have to see for yourself in a few minutes. Judging from all the excellent feedback from Reddit and the HearthstonePlayers.com comments, there were 3 picks in particular that people took issue with. The first was me taking Gadgetzan Auctioneer over Wailing Soul, and the second was me taking Emperor Cobra over Nerubian Egg. The final one isn't as much a specific pick as much as it was some people felt that Voidcaller is top tier in the arena and should have been picked pretty much every chance I got. What comes next is results-oriented thinking, but I will take a look at key moments in the game where, had I had one of the alternate cards, we could see how many opportunities arose where I might have preferred the other instead. So let's deal with Wailing Soul and Gadgetzan Auctioneer. My comments about the two essentially boiled down to me feeling like both are average to under average on stat allocation, but while the Wailing Soul has upside as well as downside, Gadgetzan is pure upside. For the sake of this run, I'm quite happy with the Gadgetzan pick, and I have the footage to prove it. For this portion of the video, let's play a results-oriented game called Whale or Auction. I'll work on improving the name some other time. I'll pull up the times I had the Auctioneer in my hand, and let's take a look at the plays and see if it would have been better for me to play Wailing Soul, or if it really was better to have the Auctioneer in the end. In door number 1, we have a top-decked Gadgetzan Auctioneer. In this situation, what would you do? Would you wail, or would you auction? Ding ding ding, correct, we have auction in this situation. Wailing kills the Cobra's special ability, so if we had it in our hand we wouldn't really want to play it, and instead we would have tapped and Fire-Seared, or we would have played the Voidcaller and been a little off curve. The following turn we still wouldn't have wanted to play the Wailing, so we probably would have tapped again and played the Voidcaller if no other options came up. I was able to avoid this headache by simply plopping down my 4/4 on the board and leaving the other options open. In door number 2, we're in a tough spot against a mage. We can't play the Wailing Soul or the Auctioneer this turn that they're drawn, and neither is the optimal play the following turn, but after that we run into a situation. Would you wail, or would you auction? Yes, of course in this situation you would auction because the hand isn't particularly great here, and the Soulfire can open up some more options with a possible card draw. It turns out, it does! Yay, Auctioneer! In door number 3 we have an Auctioneer that we drew during the mulligan. On this turn we could play the Wailing Soul if we wanted to use the coin. Do we wail or wait? Well, we could wail and clear the meaningless death rattle at this point, but seeing the coin and the Mortal Coil are already in hand, it seems like we have a good opportunity at a later point for the Auctioneer to shine. Turns out we sure do, and our massive advantage gained from his card draw directly translated to a Rage Quit victory. And thus concludes our first and last ever Whale or Auction game. There were very few other times I was able to utilize the Auctioneer during the run, but in general I had board control during this run, and Wailing Soul really would have been a liability if I had the option to play it. Even though Gadgetzan's upside is less useful for Warlock, it proved more valuable this run, and in fact almost directly gave me a win due to the stars aligning. Another contentious pick was between the Emperor Cobra and the Nerubian Egg. Now I really only encountered truly crippling AoE twice in the run. The first was against a mage that I overextended against and he ended up top-decking a Flame Strike, and the second time was when I faced a paladin who twice top-decked Consecration. Okay, I'm gonna come back to that game a little later because it hurt pretty bad, but I guess my point is I didn't get too many options to truly give the egg a fair shake. Cobra did have the highlight of eating a Spectral Knight, but that's about it. So I guess I'll spend this time to defend my pick once more in the abstract. There are 2 ways to use Nerubian Egg. The first is as board clear insurance and just plop him down for a game, or before a turn you anticipate your opponent might play a sweeper. And the second is to buff it, and at worst get a cheap 4/4, and at best get a trade and a cheap 4/4 out of the deal. If your deck has the flexibility, maybe you have the option to do both, but here's the problem. If you want it as wipe prevention, you don't want it in your starting hand, and you're relying on it being around when you expect a wipe to occur. This mostly means that if you play a paladin or a mage and if they have a sweeper they plan to play on curve, then you want to drop the Nerubian Egg to prevent the board clear or get a 4/4. Those are quite a few requirements though to get value from the egg, and by the time you do get value from it, the 4/4 body isn't going to be nearly as intimidating as if it was around earlier in the game. So let's say instead we're going the tempo game, where we want to have an early egg and activate it on turn 3 or 4. In order to make the egg useful here, we need to hope that we draft enough activators to make it consistent, and we need to mulligan for the egg, or at least not send it back when it comes up early. Aside from the fact that at the time of this choice we didn't really have many activators, this once again is contingent on a number of things. We need to hit the hand, otherwise we basically give up our turn 2 by playing the 0/2 the enemy is going to ignore, and will be set back in tempo. Or suppose we don't have an egg in our starting hand. We're still going to be using our damage buffing minions for good trades otherwise. We don't want to let them languish in our hand with the hope of an egg coming up later that we can make use of. In both situations, egg is better with a deck designed for it. The egg zoo I run sometimes in Constructed has an Abusive Sergeant, 2 Defenders of Argus, 2 Power Overwhelmings, 1 Direwolf, 2 Void Terrors, and 2 Dark Iron Dwarfs. That's a full third of the deck that can activate the eggs. Compare that to an average arena run and you're probably looking at 3, maybe 5 if you're lucky, that can give bonuses to friendly minions. And you're not guaranteed any. At the point the egg came up I really just had 1, with the Master Swordsmith. Now that I've said all that, let's look at Emperor Cobra once more. What does it ask of us? Nothing. What does it do? It trades 1 for 1. Does it have upside? Yes it does. Sometimes it can hit big things. Does it have downside? No more than most other 3-drops. It's consistent, it's almost always playable at any stage of the game, and it sometimes does more than you expect. The more I ramble about this, the better my pick seems, and I do defend the Emperor Cobra pick. The final thing I want to talk about from the video discussion is me needing to give Voidcaller more love. I think for me the jury is just still out on Voidcaller. I had some success getting a free Pit Lord out during the run, but most of the demons I had I wanted to play early, and without the demons in my hand, Voidcaller was a pretty crummy 4-drop. I have a hunch drafting tons of Voidcallers is much like drafting Starving Buzzards pre-nerf in Hunter runs. If you start getting synergy early, then by all means go hog wild and it can be pretty awesome. But many times people will pick suboptimal cards with the hope the synergy will come, and they're left disappointed with a crappy deck. Maybe I'll need to go Voidcaller happy next time I do Warlock and see if I can make a Voidcaller chain. So now that we've covered some of the picks for the draft and how they fared, I'd like to take a few minutes to look at some of the challenges I faced in this run and try to walk through turns I was faced with. This is the part of the run where I can whine to all of you about my bad beats and force you all to relive my horror. The first bad beat happened during my second game, where I lost twice in the early game with 25% chance events. The first was Mad Bomber Shenanigans, and the second was Knife Juggler Shenanigans. He got too much value off the bat and it was pretty much impossible at that point for me to come back. Another situation was when I faced a shaman who lived the dream. What do I mean by the dream? Well, I tend to subscribe to the school of thought that values consistency and high value minions without relying on a lot of combos. It's a pretty boring mentality in truth, but hey, the results speak for themselves and I found it gives me the best chance to make a deep run in the arena. There's another school of thought, however, and that is one with a lust for combos and blowout wins. You typically find these sorts of decks early on in an arena run, and while they probably won't be consistent winners, when they can pull it off, it's hard for any other deck to win against them. I ran into that sort of shaman deck and the results were catastrophic. Misery loves company, and I'm quite happy I can share my bad beat with you all. So ultimately I started my run 2-2 due to these losses, which was disappointing because I felt like my deck was very strong and it could have gone much further than it ended up going. It's another reminder to everyone that top arena players can rarely ever crack win percentages above 75%, since there is a randomness to arena that will bring even the mightiest deck down from time to time. The best you can do is try to shake off the bad luck and keep a cool head for the next game. Finally, let's walk through one more loss in the arena and try to analyze the potential plays I could have made. Maybe we can work together to find ways I could have turned the game around and snuck out a win. During the mulligan, I was tempted to keep Mortal Coil, but I figured it was better to send it back for more minions. As you know, I had a strong low curve with 3 solid 1-drop minions, and enough other 2s and 3s that I felt it was more important that I hit those cards in stride. Fortunately, I was rewarded with the return. In turn 1 I didn't want to coin here because I had some flexibility and wanted to see what he played. It was also useful I had an Imani Berserker in hand because anything with low attack like the Dude Summon or another sub 3 damage minion would activate it, and I wanted to react instead of scaring something else off that he could have played. In turn 2 my patience paid off and I got a pretty decent board for the Imani to at the very least trade 1 for 1 or at least demand an answer from the Paladin. Unfortunate value was gained from him with the Abusive Sergeant, but fortunately Mortal Coil came up here and I felt like the Harvest Golem was worth coining out, since it appeared to clear the enemy's board and leave a 2-1 body behind. It was a little risky to coin it out here since I didn't really have a stellar turn 4 play, but the Abusive was just too juicy of a target for my Mortal Coil, and I couldn't follow it up without playing anything. In turn 4, the Paladin has a good answer, but he doesn't have much on his board. I figured I'd go off curve here since the Tidehunter is no good, but at least my Ghoul represents a pretty solid minion with his board of weenies. Sludge Belcher is a quite strong 5-drop, and I don't really have a great follow-up here. I play the Knight over the Tiger though because the Ghoul was almost certainly going to die this turn, and I needed a few hits to get through the Belcher. The Tiger wasn't going to cut it with its single attack. Some good Argus value from the enemy Paladin, and I'm in a bit of a pickle early. I felt like Frost Elemental and Ghoul trade was best because I wanted to get rid of the 4-2 taunt, and freezing the 3-2 would at least allow me to theoretically get through the slime the following turn. More efficient removal from the Paladin. The plus side for me is his expensive removal cards haven't given him a chance to put down strong minions on the board, but the downside is I'm behind on the board. Tiger and Alpha was my best play I think, because the Tiger should at least get a chance to attack and keep a strong body the following turn, and Alpha trades 1 for 1 at the least with his Mad Scientist and Ooze. Shots fired, an Ogre has been spotted. I didn't want to burn both Arguses at this point since I had a Molten Giant in hand, and it looked like I'd probably get a free one pretty soon. Instead I gambled with a card draw to set up a taunt wall that could at least slow down some of the token minions he had played up to this point, and set up an Ogre kill for me later. The play was weak to Consecration, but I was behind enough that it was worth a bit of a risk to try to get the board back under control. The play he made pretty much confirmed he didn't have Consecration in hand, so it was good information to know since I would need to overextend to come back from this position. With the second Giant I had an awesome turn here that I hoped would totally change the shape of the game. Behold, the Arena Handlock! In turn 10 he floods the board, but Initiative has changed hands. I was high enough HP that I wanted to keep tapping to get more options, and the Elune came in handy for the extra health here. At this point I really wanted to protect my Giant and get as much value out of it as possible, so I felt it was worth the loss of a Void Caller in a demonless hand. Some nice Mad Bomber value here taking out my Fairy Dragon, but I still have the ability to clear his board and keep everything alive. Even though I'm almost positive the card he has in hand isn't Consecration, I still wanted to play around leaving everything at 2 HP or less, so I'm sitting pretty at the end of the turn. Nothing can stop me now, right guys? Right? Well, an absolutely brutal Consecration top deck. Combined with the Ancient Mage and the token, it's a perfect 10 mana 3 damage sweeper for the board that I had. It's the sort of thing that you can't ever really plan for. I was fortunate to get a Siphon Soul at least and get some card draw along with the Gadgetzan. I also learned a valuable lesson here: to always read the cards! I played Soulfire on the 1-1 after this and forgot Gadgetzan draws a card before the spell resolves, while Soulfire discards after the spell resolves. The Flame Imp goes in and out of my hand. To be fair though, I probably would have played the Soulfire on the 1-1 anyways at this point, because with us in top deck wars and me having a 1-3 dude killer on board, the damage from the Auctioneer could be invaluable at the end of this game. A very perplexing pass from the Paladin. I was left in a tough spot after the Pit Lord draw. With 8 HP, do I Pit Lord or do I simply Crusader? Presumably if the paladin had direct damage last turn he would have played it, but if it was a charge minion or a combo piece of some sort, I didn't want to get myself at a point where I leave myself too open to incidental damage. I ended up holding the Pit Lord in hand. Turn 14, the second Brutal Consecration top deck, and our run comes to an end. If I played the Pit Lord, I would have been left at 1 HP, so it's hard to say if I would have been able to trade and survive the following turns with such a limited board, but I still think holding it was probably the best play since I felt like a 1-3, a 5-1, and a 3-1 Divine Shield could deal with most of what the Paladin might have drawn. Tough beats in all the losses I had this run though. I wish I could play this deck again, but alas, it's no good. At least we hit 7 wins and reap at least 150 gold from the run. Time to check out the card pack. Will I get my first legendary on air? Nope. Shucks, maybe next time. Well, that's it for today. Time to hang up my trusty Warlock hat. I'm not done with this series though, we still have 5 more heroes to make a quiz for. Be sure to tune in to HearthstonePlayers.com next week for my next choice. If you've been enjoying these videos, be sure to subscribe to HearthstonePlayers.com's YouTube channel for multiple videos every week, and check out my personal YouTube channel if you want to see a variety of other games. As always, I've been MrShine, and I'll see you next time!